actually being pushed out to the virtual world and on our Facebook page and YouTube. So once I receive that confirmation, we're good to go.
Great.
And I just received that. So we could do a countdown of 3, 2, 1, and you can start. Thank you.
Let's do that.
Okay, so 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and we apologize for that brief interruption. We lost connection to our Zoom meeting support, so we, as per regulations, we suspended the meeting in that time, and we're delighted to be back. And we were just starting to hear from Sean Webster from Canopy Growth and discussing an opportunity for tourism and the consumption of beveraged cannabis infused drinks. So back to
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Brennan.
Sorry to interrupt. Do we need to go through, because I think the mayor and myself declared on a couple of items, so maybe we should do that publicly.
I believe that was part
that
when
okay?
we were live, but
okay.
Yes, but we'll do it again when we go in camera, Councilor
okay.
Brennan. Thank
Sounds
you.
Good.
And I'm delighted. Thank you. That's fine. And I'm delighted that Councillor Dwyer has now joined us. It's good to have you. So over to you, Mr. Webster. And if you could just pick up where you left off, that would be great.
Sure. Can you all see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Great, perfect. Okay, so I left off, we were just talking about the lack of options where people are able to consume cannabis-infused food and beverages is restricted to either ironically their homes or in a public place, but they're not permitted to consume them in a restaurant or a bar or licensed establishment. We think it would be preferable to have these beverages and for consumers to be able to consume these beverages in establishments that are regulated, where service of such products to minors is prohibited and under supervision, which we know is something that's very important for our society. And later on in the presentation, Michael Wilson will get into some of the considerations that the province uses when it's setting regulation around alcohol and cannabis. And just the final point I would make is that Ontario is home to several federally regulated licensed producers of cannabis beverages, including right here in Smiths Falls. There's also a facility in Belleville, Ontario, London, Ontario, and there's a new facility is just opened in Lansdowne, just down the road from us. So in terms of what the potential market is, it's pretty significant. There's been some other statistics that have been bantied around, including in an article in the Globe and Mail this morning. But it's estimated that the cannabis edible market alone could be worth at least $1.6 billion a year, with cannabis beverages worth at least an additional $529 million. And this is a significant market, which can help Ontario's hospitality entrepreneurs with the considerable opportunities that they have to include cannabis food and beverages in their offerings. So we think that this is a way for new businesses to be created. So why? Well, it's going to be good for attracting cannabis tourism. Other jurisdictions in North America are already looking at this, including here in Canada and also in the United States. This could create new business opportunities for entrepreneurs who are interested in getting into the cannabis space, but who perhaps don't want to be in the retail space, but would rather be in the hospitality industry. We think that this will help enhance economic recovery, not just through the development of new businesses, but also through increased points of sale for cannabis in the province, which would add revenues to the provincial tax base. Safeguarding cannabis consumers, as I mentioned previously, having these products available in age-gated environments that could be safeguarded from minors would be very beneficial from our perspective. And also considering the growing and large investment that companies such as ours have made right across the province, that this would show that the provincial government is supportive of that kind of investment moving forward. So I'm now going to ask Chris, the president of TAIO, to jump in and provide a little bit of background on where TAIO is coming from from this. And Chris, when you're ready for me to flip slides, just give an indication.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks, everybody. Thank you to the mayor. Thank you to the elected representatives for hearing us this evening. I'm going to stop my clock for 3 minutes so that I don't go over that. But I'm just going to give you a brief explanation of who we are at TIO and why it's so important that what Sean is putting forward to you today and what we're hoping that you might declare will hopefully be the start of a process within Ontario that gets us to a position where we can start having a legal product consumed on premises that can help our industry and help our economy rebound. And as you can imagine, as a tourism industry, we've had a pretty horrific last 20 months as an industry. Our revenues have fallen for our business members from around 60 to up to 93% in some areas that are reliant on cross-border travel. And many of our businesses have lost their staff members. We've lost over 100,000 jobs in the tourism industry in Ontario. And a lot of our businesses have taken on pretty large amounts of debt to get through this period. And so we're always looking as an industry to innovate, and we're always looking as an industry to try and tap into new markets and opportunities that can help bring back jobs and can spur on our economic recoveries in an industry. And so, our industry was worth $36 billion to Ontario before the pandemic. We've probably lost 3/4 of that over the last year or so, and so it's been a pretty horrific time. Sean, if you can go to the next slide. One of the reasons we were supportive of Canada Tourism and trying to get this change in legislation was before the pandemic was because there is just untold opportunities and opportunities that other destinations and other countries and other provinces are going to get ahead of us in Ontario if we don't take action. And, for decades, alcohol and tobacco have been used at the heart of marketing campaigns to attract visitors to destinations and attractions. Who would visit Dublin without first visiting the Guinness Storehouse, or leave Ontario's Niagara region without tasting the local ice wine? Yet from the very beginning, cannabis has been hamstrung in the way that alcohol hasn't. And this is costing Ontario and Canada billions of dollars and thousands of jobs. Even during the pandemic, other destinations without the advantage of a legalized federal framework were making Canada tourism an integral part of their recovery strategy. Some of you may have seen New York City advertising on the TV, encouraging people to go to New York. But New York, one of the most popular tourism destinations in the world, have actually stolen a march on many other destinations in passing legislation and opening up Canada tourism opportunities as a new and exciting string to its bow to attract more people to NYC. And as entrepreneurs start to consider the possibilities that Canada Tourism can add to art, music and sporting events, business conventions and retreats, cultural tourism, health and wellness tourism, and virtual tourism, there is just so much opportunity if we just simply grab the nettle on this and actually move forward. And, Sean has already mentioned some numbers, but economists are already predicting over a $5 billion impact to the economy from legal sales of cannabis, and an assumption that combined with Canada Tourism, Albany in New York will be reaping the rewards for taking the lead on Canada Tourism for some time to come. So whilst New York is pressing ahead, Ontario and Canada's Canada Tourism remains stuck in the mud. And, we know that there are some difference of opinions across the political parties about the consumption of cannabis or not. But this is about having a legal framework for a legal product. And, as a tourism industry, we're always looking to support new and evolving trends. And this is definitely a trend that's happening across the world. And we have to make a decision, and you may have to make a decision as a council. Do we want to press forward and bring the prosperity that comes with that for Ontarians and for their livelihoods, or do we want to miss out on it? And right at this moment, with the industry in the state that it is and the perilous economic future that we have as a tourism industry, I think it's a really good time to get behind this. And I really do believe that political parties of all types and all politicians will see that this is the way forward. We just need to give them the spur to do it. So I thank Sean for the opportunity to speak, and I'll pass over to Michael.
Great. Thanks, Chris. So now I'd like to ask Michael Wilson from Goodman's to walk us through the regulatory considerations that the council may be interested in.
As Sean mentioned, I worked with the provincial government, and I've worked both on cannabis and liquor regulation. And I've also worked in the course of doing that, dealt with foreign jurisdictions, particularly the United States, on their cannabis frameworks as they were rolling out cannabis retail frameworks. In Ontario, as you'll recall from when they rolled out the retail framework, the government always talked about focusing on 3 key ideas: protecting public health and safety, restricting youth access to cannabis, and trying to combat the gray or illegal market. And that would be illegal cannabis dispensaries and illegal cannabis production. Those same factors will inform any rollout of cannabis on-premises consumption. And whether that's done at a provincial level or whether the province were just to allow municipalities to establish their own framework, people are going to have to figure out, policymakers, councils, or the government eventually are going to have to figure out what kinds of rules are going to have in place, make sure that when people are consuming cannabis on premises, they're doing it in a way that avoids gray market infiltration into cannabis sales and ensures that the public is protected from overconsumption and ensure that youth aren't accessing cannabis products. So whatever framework we roll out, you're going to want to see things like training for support staff to make sure they're not serving youth, not over-serving intoxicated people. You're going to want to make sure there's incentives for entrepreneurs that are opening on-premises consumption facilities in the legal market to ensure that their stores aren't becoming, or their on-premises cannabis consumption facilities aren't becoming venues where young people can go to access cannabis or where people are being over-served. So a licensing framework like that has been implemented provincially for retail, typically achieves those objectives by incentivizing the operators to always have their license on. Finally, I'll just note, as Sean has mentioned, we'd be first in Canada for any municipality that was able to get the province to say, yeah, you could do this on a pilot basis. You'd be first in Canada, but there are jurisdictions in the United States, Colorado, certain municipalities in California, Nevada's established a framework. New York's passed legislation, not yet implemented, but set out a framework. You'll likely see cannabis consumption venues there within 12 months up and running. And the list goes on. Alaska has cannabis venues up and running. So we would be the first in Canada, but there are other jurisdictions we can look to around the world to see what kind of regulatory frameworks and rules they've put in place and how those rules might inform any frameworks developed either locally or provincially.
Super. Thanks, Michael. So hopefully that's given council an idea of what this opportunity is and some of the considerations around it. And council has been provided with a draft resolution or motion. I think that's going to be considered hopefully at this meeting to send a message to the province that having the ability to do this in Smiths Falls would be something that the town would be favorable to. For a variety of reasons, and hopefully the province will take heed of that. And if they're looking at either rolling this out across the province, or which we think they may be more interested in looking at potential pilots, that Smiths Falls may be considered for that. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll wrap it up and ask if there's any questions or anything that we can answer.
Thank you, and thank you, the three of you. That was very succinct. We appreciate that. I'll ask my colleagues if they have any questions or comments, and then I'll ask after that if they would like to have this put on as a discussion item. So are there any questions or comments from my council colleagues? I can't quite see okay, Councillor Alford, then Mayor Panko, and Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any reservations with regard to moving forward with the resolution. I mean, this town has been involved in planning and anticipating cannabis tourism since it was legalized. Certainly, this council has been in supportive of that all the way through. I don't see any reason to change gears now. From the perspective of people who have some, difficulty with this move for cannabis, I don't see this as any more harmful than alcohol has been, and I think it should be regulated like alcohol is. So I, Mr. Chair, have no reservations about moving forward with this one.
Thank you. Mayor Panko.
Thanks, gentlemen. Great presentation, and to Councillor Albert's comments, I think this is something we've been strongly supportive of. We've developed a strategy. We love to see this change happen. One question, I guess two questions. First off, the 8 U.S. jurisdictions that are now ahead of us, were they behind us roughly 2 years ago, when consumables were first permitted?
Other than, I always had, I think, other than the Colorado, which had a retail framework, the other jurisdictions were not ahead of us. They were, the California situation is a bit difficult to compare because it's on a municipal by municipal jurisdiction basis, but only Colorado and Oregon were ahead of us, and on the consumables on site, Oregon's.
So we've really fallen behind in the last couple of years. Thank you. Second question, I know the resolution speaks to copies going to numerous ministries, and the Rural Ontario Municipal Association Conference is at the end of January, and I think we have until midweek to seek a delegation if we wanted to with a minister. Do you see, I guess, merit in us seeking a delegation with the minister to indicate our strong interest, and which minister do you think would be the most appropriate to target?
Yes, I think it would be helpful if you could get that meeting. The ministers that would be the most helpful moving forward with this are the Minister of Finance, Peter Bethenfalvy, the Attorney General, Doug Downey, and the Minister of Cultural Industries and Tourism, Lisa MacLeod. And I think also Steve Clark, as Municipal Affairs as well, would also be helpful on this file. It's, in terms of the policy itself, the AGCO is an animal of the Ministry of the Attorney General, whereas the Ontario Cannabis stores are part of the Ministry of Finance, or controlled by the Ministry of Finance. So it's a multi-jurisdictional, multi-departmental decision.
Okay, we will take the advice. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thanks guys for the presentation. And it's really, it's just a natural evolution. It's a no-brainer. I mean, I think that Smith Falls has been out front. We've had a cannabis tourism strategy right from the get-go. It's a couple years old now. And to be the first in Canada would be a real feather in our cap. As everyone knows, we were the home of Hershey, the chocolate capital of Canada. And I'd love to be renamed, because I think that was the whole idea behind the cannabis strategy. And we've got a whole a new look to the town. And I fully support a resolution to help you out. And I think the mayor has a great idea as far as shaking some trees in Queen's Park at the conference. So thanks very much.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Councillor Mcguire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us tonight, gentlemen. I had the pleasure of getting to represent Mayor Panko at the TCAN 1-year anniversary on October 31st, and I was really impressed. It was my first time in the business. I was impressed with the setup, but I was really surprised of how many rules and regulations are still in place that are making it hard for the industry to do business. I think this is a really great idea, but I think it's just the tip of the iceberg of the changes that need to happen to safely market the product in the province. My only question is that in the resolution part, we're sending it to the Minister of Finance, Attorney General, Leader of the Opposition, etc. Should we be sending it to other municipalities in Ontario as well to see if we can get some momentum going from anyone else out there that would have an interest in this?
Mr. Chair, is that addressed to me? Can I go ahead? Thanks.
Yeah,
yes, that would be. Sorry.
No, I think I know the answer, but please go ahead, Sean.
Yes, that would be very helpful. One of our competitors is in discussions with another jurisdiction right now, and they are considering passing a motion very similar to this. We've actually shared it with them. So I think it would be helpful to share this with other jurisdictions as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing general support for both your resolution and moving this forward as quickly as we can. And I'm pretty sure we have consensus on picking up on the mayor's suggestion and seeking a delegation to at least one of those 4 ministers. Um, if unless someone tells me that I've got that consensus wrong, I'm going to proceed with that direction. Is council's wish to bring that forward at tonight's council meeting, that resolution? Just yes, I'm seeing nods and thumbs up. Well, that's great. I think the timing is perfect, and I do feel particularly concerned about the tourist industry, Mr. Bloor, and I do recognize the impact that COVID has had on you. I think it couldn't be a better time to bring this forward and see if we can help our tourism industry out in another way.
Much appreciated.
Yeah. So thank you very much. So you've got green light. Everyone on council would like to move this forward, and we're going to do it tonight. And we're going to seek a meeting with the minister. So I think you can't get any better than that.
Super. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We really appreciate it. And thank you all members of council. Very much appreciate your support, ongoing support, I should add.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Nice to meet you all. Okay, we're moving on to our next delegation. And Jake Wilson is joining us, and I'm sure he's no relation to the other Mr. Wilson that was just on. Jake is with the Rideau Environmental Action League, and he's going to talk about his findings from the Shoreline Cleanup. The only thing more important than tourism and economic recovery is our environment. So Jake, over to you. And again, if you could keep it around 10 minutes, we'd really appreciate it.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our findings from the Shoreline Cleanup and talk about that some more. So I think Peter Au is supposed to be joining me doing this, but he thought that we were going to be doing this at 6 p.m. So I'll go forth and do my best with this. So I'll share my screen here and give you a little visual presentation of some of the stuff we found. All right, so here's a little Shoreline Cleanup report for our October project in October 2021. So I was involved with this as the coordinator of the project. I was involved in the promotion, the documentation, and the facilitation of the cleanup day. And we had two different shoreline cleanup projects kind of within the day. One on the more west within Smiths Falls, and one just outside of Smiths Falls, more by Edmonds Lock Station. So here are all the sites that we picked up at. Our first one being by the Bascule Bridge and the park area. And so last year, we found that by far the most of the garbage that we were finding was in park areas as well as on the roadsides. So that is what inspired us to choose these locations for this year and really go for the most garbage that we could pick up in the shortest amount of time. So yeah, number one was in the Bascule Bridge in the park area on Duck Island as well as Turtle Island. And as you'll see in some pictures to come, that we actually, around the Bascule Bridge was probably the spot where we found the most garbage throughout this whole garbage cleanup. Number two was the Old Slides Overflow Dam and that park area. And then, so this was the morning site, and that was about 2.5 hours that we spent there with about 9 volunteers. And then in the afternoon, we moved to the boat launch off of Highway 17 in the bottom left here, or Jasper Avenue, and the surrounding area, as well as in the bottom right, we did Highway 43 on the protected shoulder by Edmonds Lock Station. So next we have some images from the first part of the cleanup around the Bascule Bridge and park area. And here in the bottom right, you'll see this is the area right under the Bascule Bridge where we definitely found the most garbage, the most plastic had to be picked up there. And we accumulated quite a few garbage bags full in that one spot. So number two, here on the left, we find an image of some youth who participate in the garbage cleanup, as well as some other volunteers from the right for a total of 21 volunteers. And here, finally, in the back of this pickup truck, you can see this is the full load of garbage totaling almost 400 pounds, or 375 to be exact. And that was taken back to my place, sorted between recycling and garbage and building materials, and then disposed of in the appropriate location. So here were the results. We had general garbage being about 196 pounds. And of course, with these being the total weights, they're not fully representative of the volumes, because of course you'll find aluminum cans weighing far less than, for example, a glass bottle or something like that. But anyway, here to give a general idea, we have the garbage about 196 pounds, then the paper cups made pretty much exclusively from fast food restaurants. We have 9 pounds, recycling plastic 28, recycling glass 17, and recycling aluminum cans 11, and then the steel was 19, and then the wood and building materials was about 98.5 pounds. So this was a great effort put forth by everyone involved in this cleanup. We definitely worked hard and filled a lot of garbage bags. And then the sorted garbage was disposed of in the appropriate locations with the help of Vanessa Bernicki of the town of Smiths Falls. So here is a presentation that I gave with the Rito Roundtable for Watersheds Canada in September regarding the impacts that the plastics in our water, that plastics are having in our waterways, on our shorelines, in our freshwater and ocean ecosystems. And so I compiled this information based on some of the research that I did last fall for the garbage cleanup with the Rito Roundtable and Rito Environmental Action League. And in this presentation, we went in depth into the impacts of both larger plastics and microplastics, talking about how we can help reduce plastic pollution in our own lives on a personal level. So without going into too much detail, I will share just a couple pieces of information that was shared in that presentation, which I thought would be good to be mentioned here to give you an idea of the plastic issue in our local on our ecosystems in our local Rito River. So it's no mystery that sorry, I think this is actually visible on, yeah, okay. So it's no mystery that in many cases, garbage is thrown out the window of vehicles or dumped illegally, especially in our area. And as I found in this picture here by the roadway of the Rito River, this was in between Old Sly's Lock Station and Edmonds Lock Station. There was a lot of garbage found on the shoreline from people throwing it out their window on the side of Highway 43. So this is in the water. And if this garbage is not picked up when high waters come in the spring, much of this garbage is going to flow further downstream, a lot of it ending up in the Rito, and in the Rito, like flowing down the Rito River into the Ottawa River and then ultimately into the oceans. But if it stays, it's going to slowly break down via UV exposure from the sun. And when these plastics break down, they break down into smaller pieces, and they have a much easier way making its way into the water and making its way suspended in the rivers further down and into the ecosystems, causing some challenges. And there's some really quite astonishing studies that have been conducted revealing some major problems that plastic pollution is causing for our local river and from the distant ocean ecosystems. So for the sake of time, I'll mention a few that are close to home. So the Canadian Wildlife Foundation reports that researchers have found polymer fibers, which are little fibers coming from our synthetic plastic clothing, which is what most of clothing materials are today, and plastic pellets, which would be microplastics, like typical plastics that have broken down into smaller and smaller pieces in the digestive tracts of fish in Lake Erie. And when these fish absorb these microplastics or ingest these plastic particles, contaminants leach from these plastic particles and cause liver damage. Of course, this would be true not only in Lake Erie, but in other freshwater ecosystems as well, including the Rideau River. And as for regular plastic pollution, according to National Geographic, in 1960, fewer than 5% of seabirds, for example, gulls, cormorants, or terns, which we find in our area, fewer than 5% of these were found to have plastic in their stomach. In 1980, an estimated 80% of seabirds worldwide had plastic in their stomach, and now that number has risen to an estimated staggering 90%. And a recent study has found that there has been a 67% decrease in population of seabirds from 1950 to 2010, according to National Geographic. So there's very limited research that has been done on the effects of plastics and microplastics in our freshwater ecosystems, but these are some of the things that I have found. And just these two pieces of information begin to highlight how important it is that we start to look at this plastic problem and start to really look at what solutions or ways of reducing this problem of plastics in our waterways might be to keep them from flowing into our rivers, affecting these ecosystems as well as the ocean ecosystems. So as for suggestions on how to reduce this plastic problem locally, well, we would love to have some time to be able to discuss possible solutions to the problem of plastics in the Rideau River, specifically in Smiths Falls, in greater detail at a later date. If we could possibly have that time, we'd be very grateful to do that, as we will look into some more solutions and ways of reducing this, so we could discuss this with you further.
Thank you very much, Jake. One, it's wonderful that you and the volunteers have done this work, and on the other hand, it's quite troubling that we have so much of it to deal with in our community. Comments or questions from my colleagues? Councillor Allen?
Yes, thank you, Jake, for this presentation. And I was sorry that I had to miss that cleanup, but thank you for doing it. And also, more importantly, thank you for bringing the awareness of how important it is, even in our own communities, that we look after our waterway. I'm very much in favor of you discussing solutions and our community being able to look to some of those. It's just such a tragedy that even in our school system, we need to be doing more environmental studies and research with kids so that they understand that, even, not drinking plastic, water out of plastic bottles, and certainly never throwing those kinds of things away. And it's a discouraging but very rewarding, I think, job you must have. Thank you for this tonight.
Yes.
Anyone else? I guess the only thing I would add is that it doesn't take any studying to tell people or ask people to stop throwing their stuff out of their cars or along this. I mean, that we don't need a study for that. Mayor Panko?
Well, thanks, Jake. That was sort of my thought process. It's hard to comprehend why people continue to still throw garbage out their windows or when they're walking. It makes zero sense, and we've known for decades the impact it has on the environment. And so it's frustrating when we see this continue to happen, and the volume that you're speaking of. I mean, it takes an awful lot of cups to add up to whatever, 9 or 10 pounds, whatever the number was there. So I'm just thinking, what we have solutions we need to delve deeper into, and I think communication. I think we can leverage our opportunity to communicate to continue to remind people. And I think your presentation tonight does help show people the impact of this neglect and selfishness. And I think we can go further to maybe build upon this and get the word out, and that's that repetition. And obviously, I think with Peter's point, get to the school, to the kids. The kids will change the habits of the parents if that's what we need to do to stop this from happening. But again, thanks to everyone who was involved in the cleanup. And unfortunately, I assume it has to be an annual event.
Yeah, we started our meeting tonight thanking our Algonquin ancestors for taking such good care of the land and water. And we could learn so much from them. We've got more lessons to learn. Thank you, Jake. And to Peter, I'll thank him for his leadership on this as well. I know we'll miss him tonight, but we'll tell him that you did a great job and you carried the banner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for the opportunity.
Okay. Good night, Jake.
Good night.
So we're moving on to the adoption of the minutes. We have a recommended motion that the minutes of the September 27th and October 4th, 2021 committee meeting of the whole be received and filed. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that motion? Moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Alford. All in favor? That's carried. And CEO Morris, how about some director's reports from you or your colleagues?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Given that tonight is a special committee, the whole meeting, we will refrain from delivering those reports, and we'll have a few for you next week at the regular committee of the whole meeting. Thank you.
We have no correspondence items. At this point, I will seek a motion to go in camera, and the motion reads that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls is provided in Section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended, move into a closed meeting to address a personal issue about an identifiable individual relating to a committee appointment. Moved by Councillor Mcguire, seconded by Councillor Dwyer.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm going to declare a conflict because I'm related to, I think, someone involved in 7.1.
Okay.
So I will not participate in 7.1 tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen, you had your hand. You're just voting? Yes. So
I'm happy to put the motion forward.
Thank you. And Councillor Dwyer has seconded that. All in favor? That's carried. So the public will just bear with us. We're going in camera. This will be brief and we'll come back out and then we'll go back in again.
Okay, we'll just wait a couple of minutes till we get all the members back on. Okay, Mr. Chair, you do have quorum. We've messaged Councillor Brennan to rejoin, but we have not seen him come back on yet.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk Bennett. So you're going to cue me in, or we're live?
We are now live, and
Right.
you can go in with your rise and report for those 3 items.
Thank you and welcome back. We had 3 in-camera items in a row. And in the first one, Councillor Mcguire declared a potential conflict. And we spoke about an identified individual was a committee appointee. And the rise report is that will be coming up as a priority item in council tonight.
Oh.
Yes,
Actually,
Deputy.
sorry, we have to add it as a priority issue at committee of the whole tonight to come out in open session.
Thank you. As the Deputy Clerk has corrected me, I appreciate that. And 7.2, we talked about employee negotiations, and the riser report is, again, that will become a priority item to be discussed tonight.
Yes.
Councilor Mcguire, did you want to make a point?
Yeah, or just clarify, do I need to declare again on 8.5 if that's coming forward tonight?
Yes, you will need to declare again.
Great, so I'll remove myself from that discussion.
Thank you, Councilor Mcguire. And the third one was a litigation with 7.3. And again, Mayor Panko and Councilor Brennan declared a potential conflict with that, and they were not part of that discussion. And council provided staff advice on that matter. And so those 3 items were dealt with. 2 will be coming forward later as priority items at committee of the whole. Thank you. So at number 8, we've got Senior Planner Granke going to talk about the CIP application for funding at the 44 Chambers Street address. And I know you're there, Mr. Granke. I hope you're there. Yes, there you are. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. The first report I'm presenting this evening represents a recommendation from the Community Improvement Plan Evaluation Committee regarding an application under programs 3 and 4 for 44 Chambers Street. The property currently contains an old chip truck and has been purchased by Carebridge Community Support for the purpose of developing a 28-unit 4-story residential building, which would be dedicated for affordable housing units. The CIP support they're seeking is the building and planning fee rebate under Program 3 up to an eligible amount of $11,500 and a tax abatement under Program 4, which can be valued up to 100% of the residential increment for a period of up to 10 years. This project was first presented to committee on December 14th, 2020 with the report by CAO Morris introducing the project and advising council of the applicant's application for funding under the Federal Rapid Housing Initiative. Council subsequently adopted a resolution to support this application, which would be provided as part of that application package to CMHC. Through that resolution, Council identified support to facilitate access to municipal funding programs, including through the Community Improvement Plan, with the objective of keeping housing rental rates as low as possible for future tenants. It was noted that the project looked to be aligned with the recommendation 15 of the Smith Falls Housing Strategy, which prioritizes the development of partnerships with not-for-profit organizations and recognition of their role in creating affordable housing supply within the town. Unfortunately, they were not successful in the original RHI. However, they applied again in August for a second round and continued with planning for the development. In August, the Samir Group, who owned the property at the time, it's since been conveyed, I understand, applied for a minor variance on behalf of Carebridge for a reduction in the number of parking spaces associated with the development. and that was granted by the Planning Advisory Committee. And around the same time, the developers filed a site plan application to manage the design details associated with the development. The second draft of that application is currently undergoing a multi-department review. In October, the town received a CIP application seeking funding support, municipal support under these two programs. The project on Chambers Street is in the CIP project area and is accordingly eligible. Additionally, the estimated project value suggests that it would exceed the minimum threshold to be eligible under Program 4. On November 3rd, the evaluation committee considered the application under both programs and passed resolutions in favor, which are outlined in the report. Similar to the last approval under this program, the committee did not recommend conditions with respect to duration and/or extent of the tax abatement so as to ensure flexibility when final funding is discussed by council following impact reassessment. The committee recommends a condition that the development maintains affordable units for the duration of any future contribution agreement. The definition of affordability is something that local governments all over Lanark County and beyond struggle with, especially when community-specific rental figures are not always available. And the funding agreement would come up with the definition, and that's something that we can certainly work with the proponents on, who are working with Lanark County as well. Ultimately, the committee and staff are very pleased to see this application and recognize that it supports a development that ticks several boxes under the town's strategic priorities and creates affordable residential development in a part of town that is easily walkable to groceries as well as several other amenities. Section 4.2 of the CIP identifies the shoulder area of downtown as an ideal location for multi-residential development. Additionally, new units in this location would also contribute to the vibrancy of the downtown core. As such, the CIP committee and staff bring forward a resolution in support of programs 3 and 4. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of the CIP committee and planning coordinator Mary Remick for all the work that they've done on this application since it arrived. As always, with a project such as this, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes, and I'd like to publicly appreciate their work in taking this on. So with that, I'll pause and I'll seek council's direction on the CIP committee's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Granke. Mayor Panko, why don't you start us off, and then we'll go to Councillor Alford.
Sure. I'm really pleased to see this come forward, and as we all know, this project has been sort of simmering for over a year, and we are hopeful that Cambridge will be successful with its application to CMHC for the Urban Housing Initiative funding in the very near future. And I think, assuming we support tonight, I think this is a meaningful demonstration from the town that we have made a commitment to the affordability of housing in our community, and by supporting this this recommendation, we send that message to CMHC that we are doing what we can to play our role in developing affordable housing. And in addition, I know it's mentioned here that they were working with the county and Community Services Committee last Wednesday evening, did support a motion which will be going to County Council, I believe, next week, which will provide rent subsidies for the 28 units. So ensuring that these 28 units will be rent geared to income. So another important box ticked off on their journey to making this a reality. So this is an exciting project. As Carl indicated, it ticks off all the boxes. Location is critically important. It fits within the CIP zone. And I fully support the recommendation of the CIP committee and staff.
Thank you. Councillor Alford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I also am unreserved in my support for this. In my opinion, this is a nearly perfect storm for an applicant in terms of being successful at CIP. I did ask this question, I believe, before, and I think I'm not sure I got the answer that I was looking for or have not received it yet, and that is that the 11.5, is it possible to take that out of the building reserve rather than just absorb it elsewhere? I know we talked about this before, but I don't recall what the answer was, or perhaps it hasn't been, perhaps staff haven't been able to ascertain that yet.
I don't know if C.O. Morris wants to try and, yeah, please.
Yeah, through the chair, Yes, we did talk about that briefly, and the treasurer was going to do some research, but we felt it would be an appropriate allocation of, or appropriate source. So we will circle back and confirm that and let members of council know with certainty what the answer to that question is.
Thank you.
Councillor Mcguire, then Councillor Dwyer.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Carl. This is echo all the comments of my colleagues. I especially want to thank our planning coordinator, Mary Remig, and the chair, Urban Zerkowitz. They had a special meeting to rush this through. Fortunately, I couldn't make it, but thank the committee for their work on the file. I think for part 2, it's an excellent candidate for program 4, but eventually we're going to have some hard conversations on how much money we want to put on the table. When we contrast that with the Housing Advisory Committee's request for a 2% investment in the budget, I think it's a really great time to be having these conversations, but just to be aware that this is more of the beginning than even the middle or the end. So I look forward to having these conversations as we get more information at a future date.
Thank you. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the property is currently in a vacant state and is paying strictly vacant taxes at this point, is there any potential for us to rush an assessment through with MPAC so we have an idea of what the increased assessed value on the property will be based on the conceptual plans or permanent drawings that have been submitted? I ask this because we've received requests in the past for consideration under program 4, and we've seen significant lag by MPAC to provide any assessment on the property post development, and it would be nice to be able to conclude this file under the leadership of this council, so that there is some assurance that when we say that we are agreeing in principle to moving forward with a part 4 approval, that the applicants have some sort of trust that will indeed be part of the discussion under this council. I'd hate to bind the hands of the next council in a significant financial decision, but also put Carebridge in a position where there might be an about face on the decision down the road.
Is that question for Mr. Grenke or Mr.
No,
Morris?
Mr. Chair, I think that's probably best for CAO Morris.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so through the chair, yeah, we can certainly reach out to MPAC to understand if that's a service they provide. I believe they have in other cases. I think they qualify it by saying it's a broad estimation of what the assessed value could be, but it would provide a guidepost, so to speak, to guide future discussions. So we will certainly reach out and have that conversation with MPAC.
If I may, I think it was a good question, by the way. I think, I know MPAC's at arm's length from the government, but I can't help but think that affordable housing should be high on their list, and helping that happen in Ontario, I'd like to think is one of their priorities as well, but we will know. Any other comments? I'm seeing a lot of support. Is there anybody to the contrary on this? No. Thank you, Mr. Grenke. That's terrific news. And the committee, as Councillor Mcguire said, they've done a great job, as did staff. So we look forward to that coming forward soon. And I believe you're up again on 8.2, the 45 Elmsley Street zoning and site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My second report this afternoon is also on the theme of housing and relates to the final 2 planning approvals necessary to allow the Lapine development to proceed. As council will recall, 45 Elmsley Inc., care of Lapine, purchased the former South Unit Hospital site on which they proposed to construct a 132-unit rental apartment complex. Requisite official plan and zoning amendments were granted this summer, and since that time, the applicants and staff have been working on finalizing the provisions of the site plan application. The zoning approval was accompanied by a holding provision that accommodated some community benefits negotiated in exchange for an increase in height and density beyond what the zoning normally allows. The provisions, including additional sidewalks, public public amenity areas along Elmsley Street, cash payment in lieu of equipped children's play area, and that the original zoning would have required, as well as promotion of sustainability initiatives. At this point, the site plan that's presented to council has been reviewed and supported by applicable departments and has also been reviewed by the Planning Advisory Committee with feedback received from them. The provisions of the holding zone have met the satisfaction of staff, and accordingly, we're in position to recommend council gives notice of its intent to lift the holding zone, which would take effect upon finalization of the site plan agreement. The site plan submission is very similar to what was presented to the public, PAC, and council through the zoning stage. The site will have its primary access on Elmsley Street near the location of the existing driveway, which previously provided access to the former hospital. Most parking spaces will be underground, with part of the parking area covered by a grass terrace. The building will be built into the existing slope of the land, with 5 stories facing Elmsley and 4 facing McGill. The main entrance will be close to the corner of Elmsley and Thurber, and a new sidewalk will be constructed along Thurber to McGill. The facade will be primarily red brick with the gray and precast white concrete features as well. Every unit will have a balcony, and ground floor units will have landscape terraces. 3 public benches with an asphalt path connecting to the Elmsley Street sidewalk will be provided, surrounded by perennial beds. I'd like to especially credit the developers with the significant investment they're proposing on landscaping and tree planting. This is a sizable building in the town, and all of the mature trees along Elmsley that provided a front yard for the hospital are proposed to be retained. That and the shrubs planted along the basement level will help mitigate the visual impact of the height from Elmsley. New trees are proposed along Thurber, and the tree line along McGill would be completed. The developers also propose significant areas of planting around their parking lot and in a few locations on the north side of the property. These will consist primarily of evergreens with several deciduous trees. The trees will be a variety of sizes, with many being larger than what would normally be required through site plan approval. At this point, the developers are proposing to begin site work and excavation this fall, with construction to begin early in the spring. With this in mind, I'd like to thank the Public Works Department, Community Services Department, and Planning Advisory Committee for the work they've done on the project, and also thank the applicants for their work in designing a major residential development and the spirit of collaboration in which they've approached the project. The staff recommendation is supported by committee. The applicable bylaws will be presented at a future meeting, following which an agreement can be executed and registered. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Brennan, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, this is a great project. And as Councillor Alford will attest, went through the Planning Advisory Committee. I want to really thank the developers, because they went over and above in terms of communicating with the neighbors, mitigating any concerns, and it's going to be a real jewel on a site where actually I was born, that has been derelict for many years. And it's going to be a great infill, and people that live there are going to have access to the downtown. It's going to be a great attraction. So thank you to Lapine, and thank you to Carl and Mary and all involved. So I'm happy to support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alford, I saw your hand up, I believe.
Wouldn't have much more to say. We've seen this planning advisor. I wouldn't have much more to say than Councillor Brennan has, except to echo his appreciation to the developer for being as responsive as they've been, and in reading the report, to be as sensitive to the fact that they are suggesting that the community benefit be steered towards Highland and Corbett. I think that is speaks to the people that are involved with this development when they have noticed and make those kinds of suggestions.
Thank you. Mayor Panko.
Yeah, not to repeat what's said, but I mean, this is the largest residential development we've probably ever had in our community on a site that's been vacant for what, 30 years, and a world-class developer builder. So it's a great addition to our community. Incredible work, I said, the Planning Advisory Committee, by staff, by Lapine team, everybody, to get this to the point where it is today. It's going to be an incredible addition to our community. So well done, and thank you.
Councillor Dwyer, did I see your hand up earlier? Or just
no, Mr. Chair, just a thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Councillor Allen, Councillor Mcguire, and McKenna's in on this as well. So There's 2 recommendations, and Committee of the Whole is supporting both of those. Thank you, Mr. Grenke.
Thank you.
So now CEO Morris is going to give us a strategic plan update. This was shared, and I really encourage members of the public to go on our site and read that update. It's a very interesting document. Mr. Morris.
Thank you for the introduction to the report. So this is the latest in our 6-month check-in, so to speak, on progress with the strategic plan. So Council will recall the plan that was adopted and embraced features 6 strategic priorities. They're listed in the report. To support those 6 strategic priorities, there are 41 initiatives that were identified in the plan. So the attachment to the report identifies the status of each of those initiatives. Given the time and the amount of agenda in front of you, perhaps I'll just kind of globally speak to your success in this regard. Of the 41 initiatives, 15 have been fully completed. So that's 37% of them have been completed. 24 are in progress on their way to completion at various stages of completion. So that's about 58% of the total. And 2 have yet to begin. That's a mere 5%. And the reason for that is they fall later in the schedule. They have due dates later in 2022. So all in all, I would say the town is on track. There are a few items that are tracking perhaps a little bit behind schedule. Most of those reside within the waterfront development and placemaking bucket. And there are reasons for those projects trailing a little bit. Most of them are dependent on partners, and the pandemic has certainly had an impact on the ability of some of our partners to move ahead. But I can say with confidence that we are in discussions on each of those items, and they are moving forward. We do have a few that will be dependent on budget allocations in 2022. So we've identified a few of them in the budget. One example is the redevelopment of Center Street along the waterfront. We've had some very encouraging initial discussions with landowners within that waterfront corridor. And I think there's a desire to see improvements. So we're proposing within economic development and tourism some monies to further that project in 2022. That's one example. There are many others, but perhaps I would pause at that point, Mr. Chair, and be delighted to answer any questions committee members might have.
Thank you, Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. Mr. Morris, I appreciate the updates that you give us routinely on the strategic master plan. And there are lots of things within here that we have been very successful at implementing. But I know that the one that Council has mentioned repeatedly at these sessions, as well as others, is the strong commitment we made to implement at least one tangible improvement in each neighborhood park. And I am so disappointed to see that we have not come anywhere close to doing so. I know that the director has put great emphasis on not making improvements until a Parks and Rec master plan is adopted. And we received a draft of that, and it was a very heavy document that we have, as a council, elected to postpone providing comment on. And I would just really hate to think that we're going to go through another fiscal year without having one major significant improvement in our parks. And I can appreciate that Mr. Manhire has said repeatedly that, you know, some of the improvements have been made annually in each of the parks. Benches have been added, lighting has been restored, and the sculpture at Centennial Park was retrofitted, rehabilitated, and installed again. But I think that this council wants something much more than that. And my hope would be that as part of the 2022 budget, that we get a firm commitment from our Parks Department that will happen. Because to date, I have not seen anything that I, as a councillor, would stand beside and qualify as one of those projects. So far cry from the 4 that we were hoping for. I am now at this point optimistic that our term of council will result in one project. Beyond that, I think that there's great movement on other parts of the plan. But that said, I have noticed that we have had some staff turnover and vacancy, some of which are still vacant positions. Our coordinator in economic development is an excellent one that was just posted today for fulfillment. And I know that we do have some vacancies in our Parks and Rec department as well. Can you provide with an assessment about how those can impact our ability to complete this plan before the end of our term?
Yeah, so through the chair, so good questions. I think, you know, if we were to do this over again, I would advocate more strongly to do the Parks and Rec master plan in the beginning of the term, not in the third year. So we felt it was important to be able to, you know, identify a more holistic approach to parks before we, you know, do each individual park. That said, we will have budget requests in the 22 budget to move ahead measurably with parks improvements in 2022. In terms of staff capacity, yes, we've certainly had, you know, what I would call an appropriate level of turnover given the, you know, the pandemic situation. It has, I would say, affected our capacity in more operationally than project-based. But I'm happy to say that we have a plan to recruit for some of those key positions, and I'm very, very optimistic we'll be in good shape for 2022.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you. My question is in regards to 6.2, Sarah Morris. It says construction complete. Does that mean the bandstand has been completed? It's ready to be put in?
Okay, so so the column I believe you're looking at is the measurement column. So when we set the initiatives, we said the measurement of success is in this column under measurement. So this project will be complete when construction of the town square is complete. So that's our objective. The column to the right under status is where we are today on that particular project. So as you know, the bandstand design and cost have been finalized. We had a lot of discussion around, you know, the design of that structure. And so it's going to be built. There's been some delays in terms of getting it built. But we do have the first step in that process is to do the hardscaping. We got funding for that. We put it out for tender. We did not get the response we were hoping for. So we're going to go back and revisit that, likely as part of a larger project. And as you know, we have Beckwith Street that'll be under construction, certainly in earnest in 2022. So that might provide some synergies to do the concrete work in preparation for the bandstand to be installed. So our first objective is to get the concrete and the electrical in place, and then situate the bandstand on top of it. So so that project needs to be sequenced, and unfortunately it won't be done this season, but we are queuing it up to be done in the spring of 22.
Okay. Councillor Mcguire and then Councillor Alford.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, CEO Morris. Yeah, I'm also frustrated with 2.1 with the parks improvement, and I'm not confident that the plan is going to help us create better improvements. So it's disappointing we waited for that. But 2.2, it's great to see we're spending that $20,000 annually, but I'd like to see much more work go into ensuring that investment's protected. Our trees are our only asset that grow in value over time. And I don't see them getting the maintenance they need in those first 5 to 10 years. That's critical for that growth. When we go to 3.2 pedestrian accessibility, at the old slides, that came up a lot at the accessible transportation plan meetings, and I'd really like to see something happen with that before our term is up. But I'm concerned, like a lot of things on this list, that parks is the wall that we're hitting. So CEO Morris, what are we doing to mitigate that risk and be proactive for the things that are scheduled for 2022, that it won't be like everything else that we've tried to do this council with parks, where it just gets shut down before it begins?
Yeah, so I would answer that question by saying that parks improvements are going to be a focus in 22. It'll be part of a look at site-specific plans for each park, and I think perhaps we underestimated that making an improvement should only come after you properly plan for that improvement. And I think the discussion we had in August at Highland Corbett Park is a good example where that's not a matter of installing a new teeter-totter. That's I think fundamentally about repurposing the whole area. So we need to decide as council, which ones are we going to simply upgrade the play structures and which ones are we going to start anew and completely rebuild and repurpose it. As you know, we have ballparks that are no longer used to a great extent. So that requires a really careful planning phase to get those things done. So the master plan is going to set the framework for those changes. So the next step is to create a site-specific plan for each of those parks and then get it done. And we're confident that we will start that process once the master plan is approved, and that'll be coming forward, I believe, on December 6th to committee to have a further discussion.
And as for Parks Canada's involvement, I feel like Parks Canada is the gatekeeper for a lot of these items that haven't been completed yet. And we can't even get a shoreline planting completed with them. That I'm more concerned about Parks Canada and our relationship with them and how their ability to derail these projects.
Yeah, I would answer that by saying we have a good dialogue going with Parks Canada. They understand our objectives, and we're weaving our objectives together with their desire to create a site plan for the Smiths Falls lock stations, and so we've had some encouraging discussions on that, but it does take a lot of lead time to make these things happen.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. I may have lost track. I think Councillor Brennan or Councillor Alford. I'll go with Alford first, if you don't mind. I think you were up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take a totally different tact here and say that we all knew this was a very ambitious strategic plan to begin with. And I am Mr. Morris gave credit to council, but as far as we have gotten on many of these things is more due to staff than it is to council, because they're the ones who have to deliver our ideas. So, and then they did that in the middle of a nearly 2-year-long pandemic in which their workforces were impacted. And at the same time, I note here, and I think I've asked this before, that staff is responsible for positioning this town to secure over $5.5 million in federal and provincial funding for the strategic priorities that this council had. So while I think we still have much work to do, and some of my colleagues have pointed that out, I don't want to leave this conversation without acknowledging how far and how fast we've come in peculiar and trying times, not just for our town, but for our staff. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and then I'm very grateful back at you, Sierra Morris and the staff of our town, that we have gotten to this point in spite of everything.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thanks. I'd echo that. This is a very ambitious plan, we've come a long way, but I got to agree with the parks thing and old slides. But you know what I'm going to say. We have a bridge that's been closed for almost 6 years. It's impassable, and we haven't done anything about it. I know it's coming forward in November, but this was prior to the last term of council, and it's a piece of infrastructure in Smith Falls that it failed, and for whatever reason, engineers said that you couldn't use it anymore, even for pedestrians. So we got to keep our eye on the ball on Confederation Bridge. it just needs to be done. I know we're moving forward on it, but I would hate to without a concrete plan to fix that bridge before the next before the end of this term. It would be a remarkable failure for me personally. Other than that, I mean, it is a ambitious plan that we've got. There's been a lot accomplished, but in my view, that particular item has been forsaken and forlorn, and I don't know why, but it has been.
Mayor Panko, do you want to? Oh, Mr. Morris, please.
Just a quick response. You'll have a recommendation at next Monday's committee of the whole to move that project forward.
Mayor Panko, have you wanted to say anything before I go back around?
Sure, and I guess Councillor Brown there, snap your fingers and it's coming next week. That's pretty magical. Anyway, no, I agree. I mean, we set out a lot of objectives, an ambitious plan. We added different priorities over the last 4 years, things that came up that we had to focus staff on from time to time. And I can't even quantify the amount of staff time spent on impacted by the pandemic, whether it's time spent directly on pandemic related activities, to just the challenges it brings and bringing staff together and meeting. So without question, it's had an impact, and maybe there's a way of measuring it. I don't know how it would be, but regardless, I think we can be proud of what we've accomplished, but I think we need to focus on what we have left to do. And with a year left in this term, we can look at this document and we know what is left to accomplish. And first draft of the budget is being finalized. We will see that next week. And it will be up to this council to, I guess, provide the funding needed to follow through on the objectives that we determine are the most appropriate to complete in 2022. So, and thanks to staff for, I guess, the diligence and following through and making sure we get things done. And as mentioned, there's been times when we've been short-staffed, especially leadership positions, which have obviously had an impact as well. But we've got a year to go. We'll get it done.
Thank you, Mayor Penko. Councillor Mcguire, did you want to jump back in there?
Yeah, sure, if everybody's had their chance. Sorry, I got frustrated with parks there. I have a question on 4.2, develop a phasing plan to complete waterfront trail. That is for 2019-2020, and the Victoria Park trail section is complete. And I was wondering what that referenced or what that included.
Yeah, so if I may, Mr. Chair, that relates to completing the trail network around the Victoria and Lower Basin, or at least on the south shore of the Lower Basin. So so a big piece that was missing was the Victoria Park, where the campground once was. So so we've been working with parks to help them with their repurposing efforts, since they've taken the lease back on that piece of property. I understand they had some difficulties getting a contractor, but they did so later in, I think it was in October. And so you'll notice down there that there is a pathway leading to the intersection of Lombard and Abbott. They've put fencing up to prevent jaywalking across Abbott Street. So that's one element of the waterfront, of a contiguous waterfront trail. We have had discussions about making the crossing over the canal and at Abbott Street a little more straightforward and safe. So we've talked to Parks Canada about that. But ultimately, this is about providing a contiguous walkway around the basin, and we felt that the Victoria Park section was one of the missing links because of the former use of Victoria Park. So there's still more work to be done on that in terms of making it fully, the bridges, the pedestrian bridges was the first step to make that connection. That's in place. So we're getting there. But it's, as you know, we have partners along the waterfront, and we've been working with those partners to kind of help them adopt the vision that we've developed and make sure it integrates with their vision of waterfront land that's largely controlled by the federal government.
Okay, so did any of our 25,000 go into the Parks Canada section of the trail?
No.
And is there a plan for that corner lot, or is that completed now as it's going to look in the future?
I would suggest it's not completed. We've simply connected the pedestrian linkage, but we do have landscaping work to be done on the lot, and we wanted to make sure it dovetails with Parks Canada's ultimate vision for Victoria Park. So I would say phase one of that project is finished, but we need to make it look more attractive and inviting at a key gateway, into town.
Okay, so I'll just add one more comment. It's just that I too look at everything that we've got completed over the last 3.5 years. And I really meant it when I asked the public to please take a look at the entire document, read it in detail. And I understand public sentiment is that what have you done for me lately? Because they're looking at today and tomorrow. They aren't looking back over the 3.5 years. But this is a good snapshot of the work of staff and many members on our committees and council. But they're looking for today what's happening. But please look at the full 3.5 years of effort. It's a tremendous amount of work, which I'm proud of. More work to do. And I thank CEO Morris for that presentation tonight. And we look forward to the next version and update on that. And I guess it does tie in very nicely with our budget discussion. It's fine to say we want all these things, but we do have to find a way to pay for it. So that'll be a fun and interesting conversation coming up shortly. If we're okay to move on, we're on to the noise bylaw 8.4, and Director Costello is going to point out that topic for us.
Thank you. Very quickly, we've had a request for an exemption to our noise bylaw. The hospital, the local hospital, has a construction company coming in to do work during the nighttime hours on November 21st between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., which is not in compliance with our noise bylaw. Hence the request in front of you this evening. It is to do critical work regarding a sewer line. Apparently, the equipment that they use is very heavy and creates a lot of noise. So they are asking for the exception to the bylaw for this one-time work happening at our hospital.
I'm seeing some thumbs up and a question from Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. Do we have notification procedures in the noise bylaw for an exemption like that?
We don't. What I was going to do, Councillor Dwyer, was put something on social media just regarding council's approval of this evening, so that there is somewhat of a heads up for the public.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm hoping also the press watching at home might be able to capture the fact that this will be there, because it will be very disruptive, but otherwise I'm fine with it.
Certainly members of the public, and then the poor folks who are hospitalized will have the, yeah, we used to have to slow down and not honk our horn around a hospital. Councillor Alford.
I also think it for the press or however you're going to notify, including the construction, it is good to know why they're asking for that time, because that is the lowest point at which water consumption can be accommodated. So there's a good reason. It's not just they want to keep everybody up all night.
No, excellent point.
The hospital needs this assistance.
It's a good time to go and visit your grandmother in Perth overnight, perhaps. So it sounds like I saw a lot of thumbs up. We understand that this is important work and needs to happen, and council's given this exemption their approval, or the committee of the whole has. Okay, Director Costello, great. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. The committee adjourned. Oh, no, we've got the priority items coming out of in camera. Of course we do. I knew that. It was a test. We have two of them, I believe. One was to appoint a member to the Planning Advisory Committee. And is there a motion on the, I don't have it in front of me, or maybe I do.
So,
No, I don't.
sorry,
Yes,
Chair.
That's
So,
right.
yes, there is a request to appoint a Mr. Stephen Mcguire to the Planning Advisory Committee. And if supported, we could add that motion to tonight's council meeting.
Council's all thumbs up on that one. Thank you. That was the first item we discussed in camera. And the second one was employee negotiations. And council has, I don't know if the chief is going to speak to, but council, or the chief and staff have reached an agreement with the Firefighters Association. And they're looking for authorization for the mayor and clerk to sign off on that deal. Is there anything you want to add to that, chief?
No, Mr. Chair, that we successfully negotiated a 5-year contract with the Professional Firefighters Association. It incorporates a robust benefits package consistent with other staff within the municipality, and the wage increases are in line with our current union and non-union staff increases.
Thank you, and congratulations to both parties involved with that negotiation. I understand it was a 5-year lease or 5-year agreement, so well done. Council or committee members, were you, everyone's in favor of that going forward to council tonight? Yes, you are. Thank you very much. May I now have a motion for the committee adjourn its proceedings at, oh, I don't know, 7:34. And stay so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor Dwyer. All in favor? That's carried. We're going to take 5 minutes.
Yes.
We have some new motions to bring forward. Thank you all. Meeting's adjourned.
Nadine and Sean, I need to leave to go to a board meeting. So if you could reallocate the motions that you have assigned to me elsewhere, that would be helpful.
No problem,
Thank
Nikki.
you.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
just put this together.
We're
Who wants to
streaming.
do my
Just-
parking? I've got 3 motions here. I got the parking bylaw. So I assume that's the Aberdeen and the other street that they're going to restrict parking. Someone want to second that? Chris? Okay, thank you.
Are we still on live stream?
Yes, yes, we are on live.
Well, we will be.
Okay.
It may be just best to wait and you could just confirm.
sorry.
it. No, it's okay.
Yeah. But we are live.
We are live.
I
It's
know.
okay.
If the
We're just
clerk
real
says it's
people.
okay,
Well, Councillor Mcguire, I see a seconder for your adoption of minutes.
Jay, you want to?
Okay.
I'll do that.
I'll go through the list here.
Yeah.
Bylaws, Councillor McKenna. I need a seconder for 7.1.
Councillor Brennan.
I'm just adding all the names to the extra ones we've added. I'll name them out in just a second here.
Okay, 7.2 was Nikki's. We need someone to.
Sorry. I'm just trying to send out the extra motions that we just passed tonight for passing. So 7.2, we will now put with Councillor Brennan.
Okay. Seconded by
I can do that.
Peter.
you.
Lorraine, you have 7.3 for the fob system. I need a seconder for that. Jay put his hand up.
Yeah.
It's good. Okay. Um, 7.4, Jay, you said Peter was going to second that. Is that correct?
Chris put his hand up.
Chris, okay.
Yeah, you beat him to it.
7.5.
I think Councillor Alford asked me if I'd second that.
Okay. As long as you remember these, that. 7.6 site plan control, that is for the P, I assume? No,
That's mine.
oh, that's Jay, it's yours, yeah. I'm not sure what that is.
That's
Is that also block 1?
yeah, it's Bellamy. I think the
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Wendy will do that.
Sorry?
I think Wendy will do that.
Wendy, yeah.
Sure. Sure.
And then we've got 7.7 regarding also, that's regarding Bellamy, and that's, we need a mover and seconder. So Nadine, do you want a mover for that?
Sorry, I'm just sending emails quickly as well with the new motions. So I'm just sending
Okay.
that. I'll be right there. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
We
Or
can
you want
handle it.
G and I to do 7.7 again?
Yeah, you guys,
Yeah, you can move that, Wendy.
Okay.
Okay, so we are on, my apologies, 7.7. I have, yes, we'll do Counselor Alford. I had no Counselor Dwyer. So Counselor Alford to do that.
Seconder?
Jay.
Yeah.
And then 7.8 is the community mills. That is with Counselor Mcguire.
Okay.
Seconder.
Lorraine, want to second that? She's on the Housing Advisory Committee.
Oh, good idea. Yeah.
And 7.9 noise bylaw. I have that with Counselor Allen.
Seconded by
I'll do it.
Jay.
And then we have bylaw 7.10, and that's the agreement with the Firefighters Association or a union, and that is with Councillor Brennan.
Did you send me that?
I just emailed it out. Yeah.
And Jay, your seconder.
I'll do it, Jay.
It's 10 bylaws tonight.
Bylaws, and then we will be adding motion 8.4 44 chambers. I have that with Councillor Mcguire. And then 8.5 is the committee appointment, and I just sent that to Councillor Allen, so that should be in your email if you don't mind doing that. The committee appointment.
Give me the noise bylaw. Is that what you said? 7.9? Is that what you said? Sorry.
7.9, yeah, the noise bylaw. You have that one.
And who seconded it?
Jay.
Somebody? Who did?
Jay.
Have to be on your toes tonight.
Why, I'm not on my toes. Okay.
Yep, and-
So what's the other one that you just said?
Sorry, 8.5 committee appointment. If you don't mind doing that, that's the one coming out of committee tonight.
You said that to me?
Yes, I sent it by email. So you should all have those. I
And
sent.
are we not doing the cannabis regulatory thing tonight?
Yeah, I have that too. Sorry, it's coming too. So the committee appointment is 8.5, and then the cannabis is 8.6, and it's with Peter.
Yeah, I don't have that yet. 8.5, Nadine.
great, thank you.
I'll send you a picture on your phone, then I sent it by email.
Okay.
Did I get a seconder for the snowplow?
Oh, I'll do it. Or maybe Mcguire. He looks snowplowy. Maybe he should do.
Okay, got Chris there. And Chris, 44 chambers, CIP, you need a seconder for that.
Alright.
Lorraine again.
Third.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Wendy, 8.1 parking system, need a seconder.
Yeah, 8.1 is Peter.
And Louis Rialde, Peter, we need a seconder.
Me.
Wendy. And adjournment is with Lorraine, that might be about 3 hours from now. The seconder,
Chris.
Chris. Should be.
Sorry, which one am I declaring a conflict on tonight?
So you 8.5 is what you declared a conflict on at committee.
Okay.
So I'm just sending a photo of these resolutions in case you didn't get them by email by now. And Mayor Panko, if you can just make sure at the beginning of the agenda that you note the items that we've added.
Okay, so I'm just checking. Okay, I've got the resolution for the Firefighter Association, which is item over here. 7.10. And then the canopy resolution. That's 8.6. Committee appointment 8.5. We got the three of them, Nadine?
That's correct. And Councillor McKenna, did you receive the canopy resolution okay by email?
No, I'm not able to. I'm reading it right off of their presentation. If it's exactly the same. Yeah.
If you could just remember the amendment at the very end, all municipalities in Ontario, that was, they wanted it, the resolution to be sent to all municipalities in Ontario.
Okay. Are you feeling ready to roll?
Oh, maybe.
We'll see how this goes.
Okay, I better make sure I get a drink of water here. It'll be hard suffer.
And your chain of office, your worship.
Thank you. I'm always glad someone reminds me. Okay. Okay, now we are technically live, right? So I can simply call the meeting back to order. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this regular meeting of Smith Falls Town Council for Monday, November 15th. On November 15th, we acknowledge that the sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. With Council's consent, we will add items 7.8, 7.9, and 7.10 bylaws, as well as motions 8.4 and 8.5. So it will be a little bit of a lengthy meeting, and we'll get our business completed. Yes, Councillor McKenna.
I think, is there an 8.6 as well, your worship? The canopy resolution?
Yes, sorry, thank you, 8.6.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that, thank you. I'll try to minimize my errors tonight. Okay, one announcement this evening regarding National Housing Day. Whereas a lack of safe and affordable housing in Smith Falls impacts the well-being of all residents, including our most vulnerable and low-income households, and limits their ability to fully participate in our community, the Government of Canada has designated November 22nd as a National Housing Day to recognize the important work done by housing partners to improve access to housing for everyone in Canada. The goal of the National Housing Day is to raise awareness about local housing issues. COVID-19 has reminded us of the importance of access to safe and affordable housing, with some of our most vulnerable populations being the hardest hit. This day is an opportunity to reflect on the work that still needs to be done. The Town of Smith Falls is committed to working with the federal and provincial governments, as well as our private and non-profit housing providers, to deliver positive housing outcomes for our residents. On National Housing Day, the Town of Smith Falls recognizes the many partners that play an important role in providing safe and affordable housing opportunities to those in need. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Sean Panko, on behalf of the Town of Smith Falls Council, do hereby proclaim November 22nd, 2021 as National Housing Day in the Town of Smith Falls. We'll ask at this point for disclosure of any monetary interest. Councilor Mcguire.
Sorry, I will declare on item 8.5 the committee appointment.
Thank you. We have no delegations this evening. We do have an adoption of minutes. Back to you, Councilor Mcguire, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Brennan that the minutes of the November 1st, 2021 council meeting be approved as circulated.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Mcguire, seconded by Councilor Brennan, that the minutes of the November 1st, 2021 council meeting be approved as circulated. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Any reports this evening? Councilor McKenna.
I apologize. I know it's late, but it's such a good news story that I wanted to just share it with everyone. As we know, the long-term care homes in Ontario were particularly hard hit during COVID. Many seniors lost their lives. And there was a report looking into it. The standard of care for our nursing home residents is a minimum of 4 hours a day of personal care and attention. The not-for-profit homes are getting close to that at 3.5 hours a day. And the for-profit homes aren't doing quite as well. It should be noted that the provincial government heard that and they stepped up with a substantial investment in Lanark Lodge. And the Lanark, as a result of that investment from the provincial government, Lanark Lodge will be able to hire enough staff that we will hit the target of 4 hours of personal care per resident every day. And so I just wanted to share that's provincial money coming in to our area to support our seniors. And I just wanted to share that. There's a bunch more from county, but I'll save that for another night. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, we have, I think it's 10 bylaws this evening. Our first bylaw is back to you, Councilor McKenna.
Oh,
You're on mute, Peter.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that a bylaw to adopt a vaccination policy for the town of Smith Falls be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to adopt a vaccination policy for the town of Smith Falls be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor McKenna?
Yes, council deliberated this over the last month and with much, it's a very serious policy that we put in place that if town employees do not, if they aren't willing to be vaccinated without a medical reason, then they can no longer be employed by the town as of, I think, the end of January. So it's a difficult decision, but we believe it's the right one.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, it's a sign of the times, but as I said last discussion, this is a duty of care we have, not only for the great public service that we have working for us, but also for the public. And in that regard, it's an important decision. So I would request a recorded vote on this one, please.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Mcguire.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Brennan that the municipality has a duty of care to protect our employees and our residents. Unfortunately, at this time, no one's illustrated to me how having a termination policy is more effective than having a testing policy. It's certainly not the more compassionate option. It's not something that's coming from the province through the Chief Medical Officer of Health or from the health unit from the Medical Officer of Health. I'm all for this policy when it becomes necessary, but at this time, I just don't see that. I see this as being more ideological than evidence-based, and I really get uncomfortable with making a decision like this that's going to have a negative effect on people's employment. So that is my position tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Alford.
I don't think there's any need for any further discussion. I do think there is a need perhaps of an acknowledgement of the hardship that this has caused to some of our longstanding and and valued staff, I will be supporting it, but it is not without a lot of anguish on all our parts, I know. Thank you.
You're welcome. I had indicated in committee of the whole meetings prior that I was not supportive of the recommendation of the policy, of such a stringent policy. And I do feel for staff who may be still remain anxious about a vaccine, as much as I believe we all agree it's vaccinations that have enabled us to get to where we are today and protect the public in a very effective manner. However, as head of council and one who will be responsible for even supporting this recommendation, I will respect the will of the majority tonight, and I will support the recommendation with the majority of council. A recorded vote has been requested, and I will turn to the deputy clerk after I read the third reading. Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to adopt a vaccination policy for the town of Smith Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10266-2021. A recorded vote has been requested.
With respect to bylaw 10266-2021, please state yay or nay. Councillor Alford?
Yay.
Councillor Allen?
Yay.
Councillor Brennan?
Yay.
Councillor Dwyer is absent. Councillor Mcguire?
Nay.
Councillor McKenna?
Yay.
And Mayor Panko.
Yay.
This motion is carried.
Thank you. Now, item 7.2, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen, I think. Sorry. That a bylaw to appoint Jonathan Prue as building inspector for the town of Smith Falls be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Allen. The bylaw to appoint Mr. Jonathan Prue as building inspector for the town of Smith Falls be received, read a first time, and taken as read a second time. All in favor? It's carried. Discussion, please, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, we discussed this at the previous COW meeting last week, and Jonathan's been helping us out, and now he's going to be employed by us, and much needed as we're very busy in the building department. So welcome to Jonathan.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Allen. The bylaw to appoint Mr. Jonathan Prue as building inspector for the town of Smith Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10269-2021. Sorry, Councillor Brennan, I messed it up already.
That's okay.
I'll let you read the third reading first.
I'll go ahead. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen, that a bylaw to appoint Jonathan Prue as the building inspector for the town of Smith Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10269-2021.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Allen. The bylaw to appoint Mr. Jonathan Prue as the building inspector for the town of Smith Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10269-2021. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Allen, you have item 7.3.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan. The bylaw to authorize an exemption to the procurement bylaw 7850-2004 respecting the purchase of a fob system for the Smith Falls Community Center be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Brennan. The bylaw to authorize an exemption to the procurement bylaw 7850-2004 respecting the purchase of a fob system from the Smith Falls Community Center be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Discussion, Councillor Allen?
Yes, this report seeks the approval to purchase the fob compatible handsets for the from Almar, as they're the ones that they're used in their other buildings, other part of Town Hall. And they were the sole supplier that had this option. And because we felt it working so well, we wanted to continue with that. So we're asking to be able to sole source this. There were 2 other people that picked up packages, but neither one of them were able to do this for us. So we want to be able to offer that to Almar again.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that a bylaw to authorize an exemption to the procurement bylaw 7850/2004 respecting the purchase of a fob system for the Smiths Falls Community Centre be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed and numbered bylaw 10270/2021.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Brennan. That a bylaw to authorize an exemption to procurement bylaws 7850/2004 respecting the purchase of a fob system from the Smiths Falls Community Centre be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed and numbered bylaw 10270/2021. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Brennan.
Okay. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Mcguire that a bylaw to amend parking bylaw 7252-97 be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Mcguire, that a bylaw to amend parking bylaw 7252-97 be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, this was discussed October 25th and then again, I think last week. And thanks to Director McMunn for preparing this. This is some adjustments to winter parking and there's certain streets. I'm just looking at Ogden Avenue and the other one was, I think, Aberdeen Avenue, where there'll be parking just on one side, and there were some other streets that there'll be no parking during the winter, just to help with the winter control in terms of plowing and that sort of thing. But I think staff did a great job on this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mcguire, that a bylaw to amend parking bylaw 7252-97 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed and numbered bylaw 10271-2021.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Mcguire, that a bylaw to amend parking bylaw 7252-97 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed and numbered bylaw 10271-2021. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Alford, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a site plan control agreement with J. Blackburn Construction, care of Samur, respecting Block 1 of Phase 1 of the Bellamy Farm subdivision and municipally known as 142 to 146 Ferreira Drive, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, seconded by Councillor McKenna, the bylaw to authorize execution of a site plan control agreement with J. Blackburn Construction, care of Samur, respecting Block 1 of Phase 1 of the Bellamy Farm subdivision and municipally known as 142 to 146 Ferreira Drive, be received or the first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Discussion?
Yes, Your Worship. This clears the way for a site plan control agreement for 51 units on Ferreira Drive in three-story apartment blocks. And will provide not only a connection to the cat trail, but as well we'll be providing a children's play area and appropriate screening for the trail.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We have a third reading, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a site plan control agreement with J. Blackburn Construction, care of Samur, respecting Block 1 of Phase 1 of the Bellamy Farm subdivision and municipally known as 142 to 146 Ferreira Drive, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed and numbered 10272-2021.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor McKenna, the bylaw to authorize execution of a site plan control agreement with J. Blackburn Construction, care of Samur, respecting Block 1 of Phase 1 of the Bellamy Farm subdivision and municipally known as 142 to 146 Ferreira Drive, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed and numbered 10272-2021. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Brennan, you're up for the next bylaw.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Alfred, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 10222-2021, being a bylaw to adopt a site plan control bylaw, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Alfred, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 10222-2021, being a bylaw to adopt a site plan control bylaw, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Discussion, please.
Yeah, this is a companion to the previous one. I think, given it expedites the development at Bellamy Farms, i.e. the site plans are largely the same. So this will defer that to staff. It doesn't have to come to council time and time again as we've experienced before. So it just expedites the process.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Alfred, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 10222-2021, being a bylaw to adopt a site plan control bylaw, being now for the third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10273-2021. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, back to Councillor Alfred. We're going back and forth here.
I'm a tennis here. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 6080-94 to lift the holding zone respecting land zone residential type 5, special exception 4 of the certain lands in the Bellamy Farm subdivision be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alfred, second by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 6080-94 to lift the holding zone respecting land zoned residential type 5, special exception 4 of certain lands in the Bellamy Farm subdivision be received and read first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Discussion, please.
Yes, this one is a companion to the previous one that Councillor Brennan had outlined for us. This lifts the holding zone, which was a condition that a traffic study be done. That condition has now been satisfied, and so the holding zone can now move forward or be taken off.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's moved by Councillor Alfred, second by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 6080-94 to lift the holding zone respecting land zoned residential type 5, special exception 4 of certain lands in the Bellamy Farm subdivision being now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered bylaw 10274-2021. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.8, Councillor Mcguire, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Allen, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community improvement plan funding agreement with Mills Community Support Corporation, Carebridge Community Support, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mcguire, second by Councillor Allen, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community improvement plan funding agreement with Mills Community Support Corporation, in brackets Carebridge Community Support, be received read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Mcguire.
So this is on a great undeveloped lot. It's a great development for the town. It fits in with the downtown revitalization plan. And it's to give $11,500 in the form of planning fees and building permit grants under Program 3 of the Community Improvement Plan to 44 Chambers Street, the corner of, I believe, Bay and Chambers. So it's two-part. The second part's Program 5, but really exciting to see this project move forward, and happy to support this proposal. And a big thanks to the committee for rushing it through at a special meeting the first week in November.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? It is moved by, third reading, please.
So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community improvement plan funding agreement with Mills Community Support Corporation, Carebridge Community Support, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10275-2021.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mcguire, seconded by Councillor Allen. The bylaw to authorize execution of the Community Improvement Plan Funding Agreement with Mills Community Support Corporation, in brackets Carebridge Community Support, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10275-2021. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And item 7.9, Councillor Allen.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that a bylaw to authorize an exception to bylaw 10151, 2020 being a bylaw to prohibit unusual noises and likely to disturb the inhabitants of the town of Smiths Falls be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Brennan. The bylaw to authorize an exception to bylaw 10151-2020 being a bylaw to prohibit unusual noises and likely disturb the inhabitants of the town of Smiths Falls be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Allen?
Yes, Gale Bick Construction Limited has advised the town that they're going to be doing necessary work that could be quite noisy in their construction work at the Perth and Smiths Falls District Hospital site. And it's going to last about 7 hours, noisiest noise, and between 11 and 6 a.m. on November 21st. And they're just asking to have this exception because it's necessary work that has to be done for that very important project that's being looked after by them.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that a bylaw to authorize an exception to bylaw 10151, 2020 being a bylaw to prohibit unusual noises and likely to disturb the inhabitants of the town of Smiths Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10276, 2021.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to authorize an exception to bylaw 10151-2020 being a bylaw to prohibit unusual noises and likely disturb the inhabitants of the town of Smiths Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10276-2021. All in favor? That's carried. And our final bylaw is with Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Alford, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a collective agreement with the Smiths Falls Professional Firefighters Association, IAFF Local 1593, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Alford, the bylaw to authorize, sorry, it disappeared on me here. Authorize the execution of a collective agreement with the town of Smiths Falls, Smiths Falls Professional Firefighter Association, IAFF Local 1593, be received for the first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Discussion, Councillor Brennan?
This is an agreement with our professional firefighters, and I want to congratulate staff, and I want to congratulate the firefighters as well for reaching this. I think it's a 5-year agreement, and we really value the work they do, and we're happy to support them, and we really appreciate the protection they afford us. So this is a great news story and going forward, and we don't have to worry about it for a while, so it's great.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Alford, that a bylaw to authorize the execution of a collective agreement with the Smiths Falls Professional Firefighters Association, IAFF Local 1593, be finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10277, 2021.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Alford, that a bylaw to authorize the execution of a collective agreement with the Smiths Falls Professional Firefighters Association, IAFF Local 1593, finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10277-2021. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That's it for our bylaws. Moving on to our miscellaneous motions. Our first one is with Councillor Alford, please.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor McKenna, that Council of the Corporation of Town of Smiths Falls award request for proposal 21-001 CORP-01 to Operations Commander in the amount of $18,045 plus HST.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
This is an integrated parking system and ticketing system. It has license plate recognition. It will be able to more efficiently and effectively deal with parking enforcement and permitting. It will also offer reporting, customized reporting, cashiering, online payments, and the ability to integrate with both the town's financial system and the provincial Ministry of Transportation ERIS system. So this is another step in technology in Smith Falls.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor McKenna. The Council of the Corporation of Town of Smith Falls award request for proposal 21-CORP-01 to Operations Commander in the amount of $18,045 plus HST. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And number 8.2, Louis Riel Day. Councillor McKenna.
Yes, moved by myself and second by Councillor Alford. Whereas bylaw 9977-2021 establishes a consistent protocol for flying of flags at municipal facilities, and whereas the flag policy provides that community flags may be flown to celebrate multicultural civic events important to the town of Smith Falls, and so declared by council in the form of a resolution or proclamation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls supports the recommendation from the Racism and Discrimination Task Force to raise the Métis flag on November 16th, 2021.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
Yes, for those folks who we have adopted a land acknowledgement, and if you read the full one, we read an abbreviated version. They specifically mention the Métis people, as well as Inuit people and the indigenous nations of our country. And the Métis people helped create the country and build it to what we have today. And at the Racism and Discrimination Task Force, there are Métis folks living in Smith Falls and in the area. And we're pleased we were asked by the Métis Association of Ontario to do this, and we're very pleased to be doing this. I think it's tomorrow, November the 16th.
Yes, thank you. Any further discussion? Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Alford. Whereas bylaw 9977-2021 establishes a consistent protocol for flying of flags at municipal facilities, and whereas a flag policy provides that community flags may be flown to celebrate multicultural civic events important to the town of Smith Falls, and so declared by council in the form of a resolution or a proclamation. Now therefore be resolved that Council of the Corporation of Town of Smith Falls supports a recommendation of the Racism and Discrimination Task Force to raise the Métis flag on November 16, 2021. And that flag will be raised tomorrow morning. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 8.3, Councillor Brennan again.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mcguire, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls award tender 21-PW-019 for the purchase of a single axe snowplow to Equipment Lord Papineau Inc., ELP Inc., in the amount of $264,589.49 plus HST. And further, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract agreement.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
Well, this is a tender that actually I attended, and I believe this was the low bid. And this is a piece of equipment that is very, very important to our town in the winter. And as I always say, Smith Falls has the most immaculately plowed streets in Eastern Ontario, bar none, and we're going to continue that tradition. This plow will be delivered, I believe, in October 2022, but I know we're in good shape for this winter and going forward, especially with this new plow.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Mcguire. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls award tender 21-PW-019 for the purchase of a single axle snowplow to Equipment Lourdes Papineau Inc. /ELP Inc. in the amount of $264,589.49 plus HST. And further, the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract agreement. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And Councillor Mcguire, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Allen that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls supports the development of an apartment building featuring 28 affordable units on the property municipally known as 44 Chambers Street, in principle through the tax-based redevelopment grant under Program 4 of the Community Improvement Plan, subject to the following conditions. Consideration for and execution of a contribution agreement will occur following the property being reassessed by MPAC and the town being notified of the same. And all dwelling units within the apartment building are classified as affordable units for the duration of any future contribution agreement associated with the final approval under Program 4, and that any reassessment received will be communicated to council for consideration and direction.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
So this is the second half. We know that the Program 4 applications have a broad range, but they usually start at the six figures. So we're going to have some good conversations in the future of how much this is going to be, but it's my understanding that passing this now helps with the rapid housing grant that they're applying for, and it is a tangible way for the town to show that we're behind this development. So it's very exciting for this to come forward, and once again we thank the committee for their good work.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Moved by Councillor Mcguire, seconded by Councillor Allen. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls supports the development of an apartment building featuring 28 affordable units on the property municipally known as 44 Chambers Street, in principle, through the tax-based redevelopment grant in brackets TIG under Program 4 of the Community Improvement Plan, subject to the following conditions. Consideration for and execution of a contribution agreement will occur following the property being reassessed by MPAC and the town being notified of the same. And all dwelling units within the apartment building are classified as affordable units for the duration of any future contribution agreement associated with the final approval under Program 4, and that any reassessment received will be communicated to council for consideration and direction. All in favor? That's supported. Thank you. Now, item 8.5, committee appointment, Councillor Allen, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that Stephen Mcguire be appointed to the Planning Advisory Committee for the remainder of the 2018 to 2022 term of council.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Allen?
Yes, this is a very important committee that the town has, and this young man has expressed an interest in it and will be a good addition to it. And I believe we were short one, or perhaps, is that right? Is that okay? And so we welcome him. Glad he's done this.
Great, thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen and seconded by, sorry, Mr. Seconder.
Councillor Brennan.
Sorry, Councillor Brennan. That Steve Mcguire be appointed to the Planning Advisory Committee for the remainder of the 2018-2022 term of council. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And our final motion is with Councillor McKenna, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan. Whereas the town of Smith Falls encourages the province of Ontario to allow private businesses who are eligible to be granted authority and approval by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario to sell alcoholic beverages to offer adult customers the opportunity to purchase edible cannabis products produced by federally regulated licensed cannabis producers for on-premise consumption. Whereas the sale, possession, distribution, and consumption of adult use cannabis are legal and regulated activities in Ontario, and whereas the sale, possession, distribution, and consumption of adult use alcohol are legal and regulated activities in Ontario, and is a permitted on-premises activity within specific retail and on-farm diversification and manufacturing settings, such as food and drinking establishments, wineries, distilleries, and breweries, and at events where proper approvals have been granted. And whereas the town of Smith Falls is pursuing a comprehensive cannabis tourism strategy that includes action for the advocacy and development of the cannabis tourism subsector, similar to the wine and spirits industry, while remaining focused on protecting youth and restricting their access to cannabis and preventing illicit activities in relation to cannabis. And whereas the Cannabis License Act, Ontario, and related legislation and regulations currently prevent businesses from offering the on-premises sale, service, and consumption of adult use edible cannabis products in settings such as restaurants and lounges. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Smith Falls does hereby call upon the province of Ontario to enact a legislative or regulatory framework that permits food and drinking places to sell and serve edible cannabis products manufactured by federally regulated licensed cannabis producers to adults, patrons on premises consumption. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to the Premier, Minister of Finance, the Attorney General, Minister of Heritage and Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, the Leader of the Official Opposition, the Leader of the Liberal Party of Ontario, and all municipalities in Ontario.
Thank you. Any further discussion, Councillor McKenna?
Yes, earlier tonight we had a delegation from Canopy Growth, the Tourism Association of Ontario. The Tourism Association of Ontario, and a legal firm talking about this perfectly legal product being prohibited. So perhaps a cannabis infused drink. So local bars and restaurants cannot offer this to adults. And they're pushing for they're advocating for regulatory changes that will permit this consumption to take place. We're one of the, Ontario would, if we adopted this, would be one of the first, probably the first jurisdiction in Canada to do so. Some of our American jurisdictions are moving quickly in this way, and some of them have already adopted this policy. So we, in the town of Smith Falls, being home to Canopy, have long supported and have adopted a tourism strategy. This would be consistent with the town's work over the last few years. As we say, it's a legal product. Adults consuming it in a safe regulatory environment, we believe should be permitted, and we encourage the government to do so. So council would like to see this go forward. We've also offered to send a delegation to meet with those ministers at an upcoming meeting to support this kind of activity.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion?
No, just don't ask me to read it again, Your Worship.
Okay, my turn. Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Brennan. Whereas the town of Smith Falls encourages the province of Ontario to allow private businesses who are eligible to be granted authority and approval by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario to sell alcoholic beverages, to offer adult customers the opportunity to purchase edible cannabis products produced by federally regulated licensed cannabis producers for on-premises consumption. Whereas the sale, possession, distribution, and consumption of adult use cannabis are legal and regulated activities in Ontario. Whereas the sale, possession, distribution, and consumption of adult use alcohol are legal and regulated activities in Ontario, and is permitted on-premises activity within specific retail and on-farm diversification and manufacturing settings such as food and drinking establishments, wineries, distilleries, and breweries, and at events where proper approvals have been granted. And whereas the town of Smith Falls is pursuing a comprehensive cannabis tourism strategy that includes action for the advocacy and development of the cannabis tourism subsector, similar to the wine and spirits industry, while remaining focused on protecting youth and restricting their access to cannabis and preventing illicit activities in relation to cannabis. And whereas the Cannabis License Act of Ontario and regulated legislation and regulations currently prevent businesses from offering the on-premises sale, service, and consumption of adult use edible cannabis products in settings such as restaurants and lounges. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Smith Falls does hereby call upon the province of Ontario to enact a legislative or regulatory framework that permits food and drinking places to sell and serve edible cannabis products manufactured by federally regulated and licensed cannabis producers to adult patrons for on-premises consumption. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to the Premier, Minister of Finance, Attorney General, Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries, the Leader of the Official Opposition, the Leader of the Liberal Party of Ontario, and all municipalities in Ontario. All in favor? That's carried, and that wraps up our formal business. Thank you. Inquiries or announcements? Councillor Brannan.
Sorry, very quickly. I just wanted to let everyone know the Heritage House, we usually have a Victorian tea at Christmas. They're going to have an event. It's going to be December 4th from 1 to 4. I'll have more details later, but there'll be, if there's snow, there'll be sleigh rides. If not, there'll be wagon rides and food and drink outside. So just mark it on your calendars, watch their Facebook page. I'll bring more details at a later date.
Great.
Let's
Thank
get that
you.
out there.
Okay, any further announcements? Motion for adjournment is with Councillor Allen, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Mcguire, that this council adjourn its proceedings at 8:28 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Mcguire. This council adjourns proceedings at 8:28 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.